product was doing. And what we found was the right thing to do was kind of take a step back, give people all the controls that they were asking for, extra controls over this.
To pull things out of this feed if they didn't want it.
Exactly, and it did. And also just to take the time to explain what it was doing. And the natural thing, or what we were getting a lot of pressure to do at the time, was to take it down. But we really believed that this was an important thing for the infrastructure of the product, so we chose to keep it up. We're pretty glad that we stuck with that.
So, in May, you launched Facebook Platform. Big event in San Francisco, at least 1,000, 2,000 people there. You launched 20 new applications for third-party developers that you've never seen before. You know, it seemed like it's clearly been had massive uptake, and I want to really dive into this. But I guess the first question is, and I know you've gone through this, you know, a number of times, but what the hell is a social graph, and what does it mean to us?
So the social graph, well, just to start, I mean, a graph is a mathematical construct, right? A collection of nodes and edges of data. And the concept here is that if you take all the people and all of their friends in the world, that constructs a social graph where each person is a node on the graph and each of their connections is an edge. And the way that we think about this isn't that Facebook has a social graph or anyone has a social graph. There just is a social graph in the world. It's the social graph of all of the connections that people actually have, people's real identity, the different friendships and other connections, acquaintances that they have. And what we try to do at Facebook is model that and map it out. We're not creating new connections.
Yeah.
We're not trying to be a destination where people can meet new people.
You're trying to mirror the real world?
Exactly.
Literally exactly.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And by mapping out
what, there's an important distinction there. Anyway, sorry.
By mapping out what those connections are that people have, we can then expose them to the extent that users are comfortable with this, to other applications which can then use them to make very compelling experiences. So that was the idea behind Platform, and just the whole theory that we have behind the social graph and what it is in the world. But I mean, it's important because I think a lot of people think that Facebook has a social graph, or that our goal is to own a social graph. And that's really not how we're thinking about it at all. It's that there's this social graph in the world, and we're just trying to model it out as accurately as possible. We're just one of a bunch of companies which are trying to do this.
So, you know, what, again, it's fascinating to me. When Newsfeed and Minifeed came out, it was sort of counterintuitive with regard to the page view model, which is clearly the social network model before Facebook. Think about MySpace and others. When it comes to Facebook Platform, once again, you bucked sort of the trend. MySpace at the beginning of the year was focusing on shutting out any kind of third-party application that didn't even hint of advertising in it. And you said, we're going to do the opposite. We are going to open ourselves up, and we're going to allow people to advertise and keep the money. Again, was that a hard decision at the executive level? I mean, seriously, with the investors and everything, or was it just sort of slid right through and no problem?
I mean, some of the decisions around the platform were relatively controversial,
yeah.
But I mean, I think at the end, everyone was really on the same page about what we wanted to do. I mean, we looked around at the whole ecosystem of social networks and social applications and saw, you know, there are a lot of sites that do a pretty good job of mirroring or mapping out a section of the social graph for their user base. And then what a lot of these services do is they layer on top of that a set of applications that they create themselves. And what we couldn't really understand in looking around was, why was it that every one of these social networks or social applications constrain the systems that the only company that could develop applications on top of the system was that company itself? We figured that, you know, there would be such a better breadth of engaging experiences if the company could open it up and allow outside developers to do that.
Sure.
And then obviously
it looks brilliant in hindsight, but I mean, I'm saying at the time of planning it, just seems like it could have been a tough decision.
Well, we wanted to make sure that application developers had as much incentive as possible to want to develop on top of the system, right? Because, I mean, even before we launched the newest incarnation of Facebook Platform in May, we'd had APIs out before that for almost half a year. I think it was actually longer than that, which allowed people to bring their Facebook information and experience to other websites, software, mobile devices, whatever. And one of the things that we wanted to do to make this program successful was really incentivize people that, you know, if they did this, they could get distribution for their applications, and that came through. And there are a lot of applications that have hundreds of thousands of people using them every day now. And we wanted to make it so that people sold advertising or worked with an advertising network, that they would be able to make the make money from that. And we're already making money from the users using the site. And if they want to process transactions or anything like that, then they can also make money from that. So we just really want to provide as much incentive as possible for developers to build with us and be a good partner.
So I'll actually jump ahead to the question I have since you touched on advertising. Given all the psychographic and demographic information we have on users, clearly at some point you've said you're going to have products in this area, you're going to have to work with the application providers and the advertising networks that exist. When can people expect to hear things from that? I mean, is there any kind of guidance you're giving us? Months, weeks?
Well, we already have some advertising programs now,
sure,
and they're pretty interesting, right? So we have the ability for advertisers to come and build a presence within Facebook. It's called a sponsor group now. And some of these have hundreds of thousands of users, and a lot of tens of thousands of users. And then advertisers can buy advertising and distribution to their presences on Facebook. Very similarly to how application developers, if they want, can buy advertising to augment the distribution that they can get to their application. And they can target it so that they can hit just the specific set of people who are going to make sense for the type of thing that they're selling or the type of community they want people to engage in. And that's kind of where we are now. I think over the next 3 to 6 months, there's going to be a lot of innovation that we'll be able to talk about at that time. But it's one of the things that we're kind of incubating right now.
So are there, I think I counted 4,000 applications on Facebook now, third-party apps, does that sound right?
Yeah, it's something like that. We have more than 8,000 registered developers. So it's been pretty crazy 3 months.
What's your favorite third-party app?
Oh, I don't think that's
Why?
It's sort of neutral.
No, you just as a user, you've got to have one.
Oh, I don't know. I really like the video app that the guys made at Facebook. We released that as an application just onto the platform.
But that's Facebook-owned app, right?
It is, but we didn't pre-install it or anything like that.
It's a good app. I just, just didn't know if like.
It's beautiful.
If anyone here is friends with Mark, it'd be great to pull up his profile and just yell out the applications that he has on his profile. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Okay, let's talk about some problems you guys had with the platform. So you launched in May. Applications came out, and you started to see some applications get massive user adoption very quickly. And some, all of those applications, there are clearly exceptions. We're doing it with, I called it black hat activities. Clearly they were doing some things that weren't completely honest with users. In particular, you sign up for an application, say that where you get to ask a question. It sends out an email to every one of your clients, sort of saying, Michael Arrington and Mark Zuckerberg has a question for you. Click here. Pretty soon you've added the app by X. Another trick was you could show the user something different on their profile than their friends saw when they went to their profile. So you show a user a very clean profile, but all their friends see a big ad on the site. Clearly there are going to be problems like that. You started off so open, and now you're starting to shut the holes. But you found that you had to sort of do some of that. Has that been a process that's caused you a lot of pain? Are you continuing to see more exploits occurring? And what are you seeing? And just how's that going?
Well, I can get to that in a second, but I'd like to put it into a bit of context first. So one of the fundamental decisions that we had to make with the platform was whether we wanted it to be fundamentally an open, decentralized, neutral platform, or if we wanted to choose the people that we were partnering with. And one of the decisions that we made early on, which is a really important decision to the whole ecosystem, is that we wanted any company to be able to come and without making a deal with Facebook or anything having to really deal with us at all, they could just start developing. So we don't have a terms of use that we spend a lot of time trying to release applications, and that's not really the way that we want this to work. We want to have a platform which technically enforces its own things. Yeah. So applications that are doing things that shouldn't be possible to do, we want to bake that into the system itself. And that's the only way that we think we'll get it to a point where it'll really be kind of decentralized and neutral, and Facebook isn't imposing any editorial voice on what people should and should not be doing. So that said, that meant that we were going to have to deal with some of these things, because there's no way that we were going to get it perfect the first time, right? Yeah. I mean, these are pretty complex systems, and it's something that we're hoping to be working on for the next 30 years. And a lot of the great platforms, things like Windows, Linux, and they take decades to really get to a good point. And but for things like dealing with spam or some of these things, we've just tried to be pretty responsive, right? And iterate very quickly. And one of the things that we're very thankful for is, we could have taken an extra 6 months to really try to perfect or get the first iteration of this to be really good, but we wanted to roll this out so that a lot of developers could start to use it and get distribution and usage from it earlier. And it's been great that the community has been really willing to work with us and help us solve a lot of these problems and fix a lot of these things and deal with the fact that we're constantly iterating really quickly. So it's been really good like that.
Respond to this criticism that people have left, say the comment on my blog, that you're plugging holes as a seed and makes sense. But the one problem is there's no way to really go back and penalize companies who've taken advantage of holes and done, I'll say, questionable activities, and whatever it is they've done. Does that give an incentive to companies to constantly look for the weaknesses in the policies and the API?
Well, I think what I would say is that one thing that we recently did was we adjusted the metrics that we were publicly reporting. And the reason why we did this wasn't just to obfuscate the number of registered users. It's for the same reason why Facebook as a company doesn't report the number of registered users that we have. Because what we think is important isn't the number of people that someone gets to sign up for their application, but the number of people who are actually using their application on a day-to-day basis. And so that's why we switched that metric to engage users. And when we did that, we actually found that the applications, which were at the top of the directory, changed somewhat. I mean, some of the ones that had a lot of users registered were also the ones that were the most engaging. But as time goes on, we're going to expand it in a number of different ways. So one example is Newsfeed. Right now, we can't figure out, or we haven't figured out yet, a great way to make it so that applications can put Newsfeed stories into the feeds of users who haven't installed that application. And the reason for that is because we're trying to prevent all these things that we're talking about now, and we decided that it was best to just keep that one closed until we had an opportunity to really figure it out and open it up. But once we get to a point where we can do that, then the advantage of having that user installed actually starts to shrink, right? It becomes more about building engaging applications that people want to use every day, and that people are really using, as opposed to just kind
getting
of trying
them for
to
their newsfeed.
Exactly, right, or trying to stake out some space in a user's profile, right? I think as time goes on, and I mean, we've only been doing this for 3 months now, we're going to start to see that a lot of things like that are going to decrease in importance, and real engagement is what's going to increase in importance. And a lot of that should equal out.
Okay, great. So here's a quick question. New startup, won't say just a new web startup. Should they create an application for the web, or should they go all with Facebook, just create a Facebook application, nothing else?
Well, I mean, I don't think that it's a binary decision, right? And we...
Really? It could be. I mean, we're seeing startups launch new applications just for Facebook, right? So there's certain types of applications that seem to do better and that seem to thrive just on the Facebook platform. You're also seeing iLink, for instance, their user growth is much. I think they have far more users on Facebook now than they have, from the application which existed before. Autonaut, same thing. There's certain kind of applications that seem to be born for the Facebook platform.
Sure. I mean, it's not. The system is not exactly identical to the rest of the web, right? I mean, there are going to be certain applications that make sense to build natively within Facebook. And I can definitely say that a whole set of applications are finding that they can grow better on Facebook, so it makes more time for them. It makes more sense for them to invest their time in building their Facebook application. And a lot of applications are finding, as they're making tens of millions of dollars of revenue off of this, that the users who are using the application in the context of Facebook are actually more valuable to them than users who are using it on their own domain. So when you start to get economics like that, then it starts to become a good incentive for people to spend more of their time and their effort building for Facebook. But we intentionally set it up so that that wasn't a binary decision, right? We want people to be able to have a presence on Facebook, build an application that can then link off the site to their own domain if they want to have something. We have APIs that we are constantly working on to make sure that people can expose more data and people can bring more of their information from Facebook to other sites. And we want it to be this good mesh that people can use both.
Let's expand on that because it's actually the next question. So user data, taking it outside of Facebook, not talking about the Facebook API, but users doing it with RSS feeds. You sort of quietly, all of a sudden there's all these RSS feeds on Facebook. What's your thinking behind that, and where is that going? What can we expect in the future?
Sure. I mean, again, I think it's interesting to take a look at that in the context of Facebook's history for 4 years, right? I think there are some people who want to say, Facebook's platform isn't as open as it should be. And we're the first to admit that we have a lot of building to do, right, before this is going to get to a state where it's as open as even we want it to be. And this is going to be something that we're going to be working on for decades, right? It might take 30 years for us to get to the point where we think it's good enough. But if you think about where it started off, it was just a site with a few thousand users at a college. And even then, we were one of the first sites that was really pushing people to put up their first and last name, right? And we did that by giving people the control over their information so they felt comfortable doing that. And pushing people to enter their cell phone number, and pushing them to put up photos and tag exactly the people who were in the photos so that you can then go to your profile and see here are all the photos of Mike. And as time goes on, we're just constantly trying to push and make it more and more open and release more APIs and open up more functionality. Hopefully we'll open up newsfeed soon, as we were just talking about. And it's just this constant push, right? And it's so whether we open up RSS or we do open search, which was another thing that we rolled out a few weeks ago, a couple weeks ago.
The search, sort of,
these are just a few of the continuous pushes that we're going to be making as we just push towards this world where people can share their information more broadly through having greater control, through better privacy settings, more granular privacy settings of exactly where the information goes.
Okay, so one of my pet peeves with Facebook, this is what I've written about this, is the messaging system. So as Facebook has become more important in my life, the damn email system is becoming more important in my life. And but I don't have access to it in Mac Mail. I have to log into Facebook, and then I have to click over to the email application, and I have to use your web interface, which isn't the best for reading a lot of emails. Recently, you guys started allowing me to send emails to normal email addresses from Facebook, which is great. Can I assume that that's a first step in making Facebook email a sort of more generally functional web mail system, where we'll have maybe POP or IMAP support, or at least the ability to forward messages? One of the biggest complaints is that when you get a new message, Facebook will email you and say you have a message, but I can't read the damn thing until I click on a link and go over to Facebook. And sorry, I'm ranting. No, so go ahead.
No, well, Facebook Messages is an email, right? It started off in this, again, very simple state where you could only send a message to one individual at a time. It's actually only recently that you can even send messages to more than one person. So this is one of the areas where we're just kind of pushing it. We want to see where it's going to go. We think that there are some advantages to having it not be exactly like email. For example, in the environment that exists now, it's relatively easy for us to prevent a lot of spam. And we think that that's good, right? That's part of what makes it a cool thing. Another thing is that the messages that you get are mostly from individuals, right? They're mostly sent directly to you. There are a lot of email lists that you're on where half of your inbox is messages that actually weren't sent directly to you, but you might be on the email list, right? So as we expand, and we're definitely going to be thinking about how we want to grow products like this, these are just some of the considerations. But it isn't designed to be an email product, and I understand some of the things that you're talking about. We're definitely involved.
So you'll definitely add a forwarding function.
Oh, I don't know. That's one of the things they're thinking about.
All right, that's it for the email grant. New funding. You gonna comment on that? I heard a rumor, all things D, raising a big round of funding.
Well, what I can say is that we're kind of at the point now where if we end up doing something like that, it's going to be because we want to do it, and not because it's something that we have to do, right? So that's a really nice thing about the position that we're in now. And we think about all this stuff just in the context of building a really nice standalone company. And we're not looking to get acquired. We're also not looking to go public anytime soon. We just want to build a company that allows us to keep on working on stuff, keep on pushing, and any decision we make about this will be in the context of that.
I remember when Chad Hurley said exactly that in summer of 2006.
But I've been saying it for longer.
Okay, so let's jump back to the sort of the whole ecosystem, because it's just, we have some time left, and I want to jump into this. And, in particular, you've got a lot of very small application developers out there. Sometimes it's just one man or one woman shops that create these applications. What are you going to do in the future to really support this ecosystem, to support these startups in general?
Well, so there's a lot of development on the platform that we're doing directly. I mean, I think that there's something specific that we want to announce today, so I think that this is probably a good time to mention that. Just, I mean, in terms of
Announcements are very good.
yeah, announcements are fun. I mean, just in terms of how to support the ecosystem, what we want to do is make it as easy as possible for developers to get started, for developers to grow user bases, grow active, engaged user bases, and to build really great experiences. And so one of the things that we thought would be a really useful way to do this is to help them line up funding and money so that they can actually start their own ventures. So what we're announcing today is a little project that we call FB Fund, and we're doing it in collaboration with Facebook's own investors, Peter Thiel from Founders Fund, and Jim Breyer from Excel. And what it's actually going to allow us to do is we're putting together a little advisory board of Jim and Peter and Chamath Palihapitiya, who's our Vice President of Product Marketing and Operations, who's kind of leading this project, myself, Rajiv Matwani, Josh Koppelman, and Reid Hoffman. And any application developer can just submit their application and a little business proposal to us, and we'll oversee this fund, which is going to start off at $10 million and could scale on beyond there. And what's going to happen is, if we think that the project is good, we'll actually give a grant from somewhere between $25,000 and $250,000. Now, notice that I said grant and not investment because we're not taking any equity in the startup. The fund is working in such a way that this is actually a grant to help these companies get off the ground. And the way that it works, and the reason why our investors are putting in money to do this, is that later on, when those startups decide to take venture money, they're going to have a right to participate then.
Okay. So I can hear a lot of typing going on. So let's recap this, because it was a lot of information sort of quickly. So you're announcing a new entity called FB Fund. The entity, it's a $10 million thing. It's making grants, not investments, but grants into companies that are creating new Facebook applications. The decision-making process is Peter, Jim, yourself, Chamath, Josh Koppelman, Reid Hoffman, Rajiv Matwani. You guys will decide how you're going to make grants based on that. The grant sizes are how large?
$25,000 to $250,000.
25 to 250,000. You take no equity for this at all.
None. Or debt. Nothing. Convertible.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing.
And you're going to make a dent in Ron Conway's angel investing business. He doesn't look happy sitting over there. And then, so what is it exactly that you can get back? The right to participate, you said?
Well, the investors, Facebook actually isn't putting any money into this ourselves. It's Excel and Founders Fund.
So Excel and Founders Fund get the right to participate?
Yeah, it's a right of first refusal on the next round.
Okay.
So anyone else, like the startups can go out and negotiate whatever terms they want.
Yeah.
And you know, Peter and Jim are great venture capitalists, and if they choose to take that deal instead, then they can do it. Okay. But there isn't going to be any equity participation at the time the grant is given. So a company can just go and get a grant and grow. And what we think is great about this is that the Facebook platform is this great distribution vehicle where with just a little bit of capital, a company can go and grow to hundreds of thousands of active users. So before, a company would have needed some seed funding and would have probably needed to give up a sizable chunk of equity to get funding to get to that point. But now, you know, with this, these companies are going to be able to get to the point where, I mean, they can actually do a pretty sizable Series A before they need to raise more money.
Okay. So where do people go to get more information on this? Is a press release coming, a blog post? Is there a site up yet? What do people do to get the money?
So Chamath is here. And
okay.
He'll be happy to talk about this after this. I'm also happy to talk about this right now.
Chamath, raise your hand. Are you in the room? Okay, so that orange shirt in the back has $10 million that he's ready to pay. So you just might want to know that. So when will you start sort of looking at applications? Right away?
Oh, today, sure.
Today, right now. Anybody have
right here. Until we have a formal website or anything set up, you can just go ahead and send an email to platform@facebook.com.
Platform@facebook.com.
Yeah, I mean, that's already the mailing list for
Okay.
Platform.
Now, what if there's a company that's already created an application that's launched? Do they qualify for this, or it's got to be something
Anyone,
sort of
yeah.
anyone? What if they've already? I guess if they already raised money, there'd be no sense in giving you. Yeah. So, but if they've launched and they just decide they want some money to live on for a while, then they could go for this as well.
Yeah, they should all feel free to submit. I mean, we're doing this as Facebook to support the ecosystem and help it grow as well as possible, to enable people who would have otherwise had the opportunity or would have had to be bogged down by the whole process of raising money, to have a very easy option to do that, just to make developing on Facebook platform that much easier.
So what's the criteria that you will use to choose these companies?
Just the ones that we think are the most innovative, the most promising.
Is profit motive the most important thing? In other words, you're looking for a return. These guys are looking for eventually they'll raise money and they'll give it back, or something that's just great and maybe helps the community is perfectly.
Yeah, I just think we're looking for innovative and disruptive things.
Innovative and disruptive things. Okay. Do you want to take some questions? We've got 10 minutes left.
Yeah, we can do whatever.
I think you guys want to. Anybody want to ask? So, Jason, do you want to? Do we have somebody with a mic that can roam, or do we want to have people go to the?
The fairest thing we could do is if people go to the. I know there are going to be a lot of people questions, so people line up just like at Esther Dyson used to do a PC forum. That'd be best. Learn from the pros. No, like it. PC forum, you line up, and that's fair. Okay, first question, state your name, your company. Do not promote your own company or do some long-winded thing. Answer a concise question, please. Esther Dyson taught me that too.
I feel like apologizing before I start. Evan Pagan, Hot Topic Media. Thank you for being here. I appreciate the information. It seems like you have a philosophy of being very open and doing what's best for the customer at all expense. Any other kind of philosophical things you have about business that you've realized as you've grown your company that have really helped you, continue the momentum?
Well, I think a lot of the openness comes from this belief that the world is just getting more open, right? I mean, as people get more control over how they share information, who they share with, they're going to fundamentally be able to share more information. They're going to be more comfortable doing that. So we just think that it's a good trend to help people enable that and empower them to do that. A similar thing to that is just how we think about platforms. I mean, a lot of companies would have wanted to own a lot of the applications themselves, but our approach to this has just been that we don't think that we can build all these applications ourselves. There's so much value out there to be created that we decided that the optimal way for us to participate in this ecosystem is to just build the base and empower everyone around us to build a lot of these other engaging experiences in companies. And if we can do that, then we think that that's a really good thing for us and for the world.
Thank you.
Great, next question.
Dave McClure, Mark. Great to hear the news on the front. That sounds really awesome. Something you said before that I think most people might have glossed over was the ability for apps to make event messages through the feed visible to people who have not installed the apps. And I would strongly encourage you to make that happen sooner rather than later, because I think some of the things you've been pushing back on about people doing spammy invites and other things that aren't necessarily in users' interests are exactly the opposite of that. So I think apps that are doing a good job of exposing interesting events and messages through the feed because their users are using them, like that should be good justification for them having access to the feed. So maybe you can talk about why you're waiting on that and can you do that sooner rather than later?
Sure. Well, first of all, that's not the only thing like that. We want to enable access to mini-feed and just a number of these other distribution and channels through the site. We're not holding back because we have a solution and we want to hold back. We're holding back because we don't have the solution yet. And we're trying to figure out a good way to do that. And some things we felt comfortable just releasing and then trying to iterate on and figure out what the right approach was. So that's how we felt about requests. And right now we're just rolling out the standard request interface, which I think is helping out a lot there. For something like Newsfeed, we really wanted to make sure that we opened that up at a pace that we were comfortable with. So I think that there are going to be probably maybe 5 or 6 other things like that. But the net effect of that should be that by the time that we solve a lot of those things, the network should operate more as this mesh of applications and experiences that users can have, as opposed to a set of applications which are each trying to stake out territory and stake out users as their own and kind of monopolize that. So, I don't know. We're obviously trying to do this as quickly as possible. It's in our best interest too, just to provide the users with the best experience that we can.
And just great news on that is if you could also let new apps install at the top instead of the bottom of the feed. I think that would also help.
There's probably a better. By the way, Dave is co-instructing a new Stanford computer science course on building Facebook applications. I actually asked you when we were meeting just before this if you plan to drop in on the class. I said you should go with a baseball cap down low and just sit in the back.
I don't know the baseball cap.
You're not with the baseball cap?
I don't know. Yeah, no, it seems cool. I'd be interesting to drop about.
I would love to know about that beforehand.
Let's try to take another 4 questions if we can. One on here, and we'll come back to the other.
Yeah, could you quickly just touch on what your thinking was behind the People Search thing that you launched recently, what your philosophies are, and then where it's going?
Or
Sure.
in particular.
Well, I think the reason that we did that is actually pretty simple. It's that people can search for anyone on the site as long as they haven't set their privacy settings to not be visible in the search. The only people that a person can actually click on their result and go to their profile are the people who are either that user's friend or the other people within the networks that user is also in. I don't know if that was actually clear. I think I did a good job of explaining that just now. But basically, any user who signs up for the site can do a search and at least get an index of all the other users who haven't opted out of search without being able to click on any of their on any of their profiles.
You're making that available to the public now.
So yeah, so all we did was remove the line, right? We figured anyone who had registered for the site could do a search, and anyone can register for the site. So we might as well make it so that anyone can do that search before they sign up, where there's no barrier to actually signing up there. And we'd actually just create more value if people could learn that their friends were on the site, the people that they would want to be connecting with before, and that would be incentive for them to join the site. So it's just one of these things where there wasn't actually any new information being shared, and we added a new privacy setting that would make it so that people wanted to opt out of this, but keep their settings the same for everything else, and that was cool too. But we just thought that this was sort of a simple thing that we could do that would just add some more value.
Great, another question here.
Hi, Ash from LaunchMojo.com. Questions. Hypothetically, tomorrow News Corporation buys Facebook and LinkedIn, and Rupert Murdoch asks you, how would you make MySpace, LinkedIn, and Facebook coexist and grow?
Well, that would never happen.
Wait, who bought it? Who bought it?
Okay.
Yeah, that should be the other way around.
Next question. He said it's not going to happen. I mean, at this point, you got to believe he's not going to sell it if you already got offered $1 billion.
Hi, Tontek Chelik, microformats.org. Mark, I first want to congratulate you for offering an API to developers to develop applications. Unlike what MySpace has done with being sort of, antagonistic with developers who want to build applications. I think that's a really good strategy. Also, for supporting RSS, it's good to see support of open standards. When can we see Facebook supporting more open standards like microformats and OpenID?
So I think it fits into the context of what we were talking about before, with just how we've started on this push to just open up in more and more ways, right? But I think it's important to always keep in mind that Facebook is a really small company. Right? We only recently passed 300 employees, and we have to really prioritize what are the most valuable things for us to do for our users. And a lot of the time, open standards are things that can help out a lot. Some of the times it's more effective for us to use our development resources in different ways. And I think that there are actually a lot of interesting things that are happening now in that space with OpenID and things like that. And I think that those are all moving in a very good direction. So I'm not exactly sure when it's going to be. I'm generally supportive of what they're doing because I think things like that are pretty important for the world. And when it gets to a point where that's one of the more valuable things for our user base, you can definitely count on us to support that.
Great. On that, we're going to have to end. Thank you, Mark, for joining us, and Mike Arrington for doing such great chat.